What do bankers in prison, ministers forced to resign, and a €200 billion scandal have in common? That they happened in the countries considered the least corrupt on the planet. Today, using Transparency International's data, we travel through the 10 European nations with the lowest perceived corruption to uncover their secret. But we won't be telling a fairy tale. We'll show you how even these model nations have been hit by devastating scandals and, above all, what concrete tools they used to fight them. And at the end, we'll see what the real weapons against corruption are. Weapons that, sadly, many other European countries don't use. If you also want to discover the top 10 most corrupt countries in Europe, type corruption in the comments. Welcome to Amazing Europe. Number 10. Estonia. 13th in the world with a score of 76 out of 100. Estonia has achieved an almost impossible feat. How did a small ex-Soviet nation become one of the least corrupt places on Earth in just 30 years? Their secret weapon isn't a law, but an infrastructure that makes corruption structurally difficult, and that consequently saves the country the equivalent of 2% of its GDP every single year. Imagine being able to file your tax return in 3 minutes, or found a company in less time than it takes to have lunch, all online. That's the standard in Estonia, where 99% of public services are digital. By eliminating queues, physical counters, and endless paperwork, the Estonian system uproots the breeding ground for petty, everyday corruption, the bribes and favoritism. But no digital fortress can make humans perfect. The real battle for integrity isn't fought only with software, but on the streets and at the borders. And here, Estonia shows its muscle. Annual security service reports document a relentless hunt, police officers prosecuted for taking bribes, border guards arrested for smuggling, inspectors certifying unsafe vehicles in exchange for money. These are not signs of a failing system, but of one that works. They reveal Estonia's true secret: zero tolerance. The country's real strength lies not only in its technological shield, but in an immune system that hunts down and destroys corruption wherever it takes root. Number 9. Ireland. What if a law not only protected you for reporting wrongdoing, but completely flipped the rules of the game? If, after your report, your employer fired you, it would be up to them to prove in court that it wasn't an act of retaliation. This isn't fantasy. It's Ireland's extraordinarily powerful legal weapon, in the country ranked the 10th least corrupt in the world. Its whistleblower legislation is considered a global model for one reason. It protects those who speak up and corners anyone who tries to silence them. This law, however, didn't emerge in a vacuum. Enacted in 2014, it rose from the ashes of the devastating 2008 financial crisis, which swept away the euphoria of the Celtic Tiger and exposed a system of cosy clientelist ties between banks and politics. That collective trauma forged a new social contract based on deep distrust of the elites and an insatiable hunger for transparency. Corruption, once tolerated, became an unforgivable betrayal. The ultimate test is the case of Maurice McCabe, a police sergeant who exposed serious cover-ups. The system tried to destroy him, but society pushed back. Public pressure triggered an inquiry that not only fully vindicated McCabe, but decapitated the leadership, forcing the resignations of both the police commissioner and the Minister for Justice. This reveals Ireland's true secret: not a perfect system, but a system in which the courage of a single individual, empowered by the law and amplified by the will of the people, can force those in power to face the consequences. Number 8. Iceland. 29 high-ranking bankers convicted for a total of 99 years in prison. No, this isn't the plot of a movie. It's the documented reality of Iceland, the 10th least corrupt nation in the world, tied with Ireland. While much of the planet bailed out the banks responsible for the 2008 crisis, the Icelandic people did the unthinkable. They demanded justice. This drastic response was born from a deep trauma. In a nation of fewer than 400,000 people, corruption is not an abstract crime, but a personal betrayal. After the collapse, citizens launched the Pots and Pans Revolution, taking to the streets for days, forcing the government to resign and paving the way for trials that reached the highest levels of finance. They forged a new social pact, shaped by their desire for truth and justice. And the fact that no one was untouchable was demonstrated again in 2016. When the Panama Papers revealed that the sitting Prime Minister had ties to offshore companies, the reaction was immediate. More than 6% of the entire population took to the streets, and he was forced to resign in less than 48 hours. Iceland teaches us an important and powerful lesson. Its secret is not the absence of corruption, but the existence of a citizenry that, once betrayed, developed zero tolerance for any form of it. Number 7. The Netherlands. What would happen if an entire nation treated corruption not only as a crime, but as a system error? An intolerable bug that makes everything less efficient. This is the mindset of the Netherlands, the 8th least corrupt country in the world. Their secret doesn't lie in ideology, but in a deep cultural pragmatism born from centuries of having to work together to wrest land from the sea. This created the polder model, a culture of consensus in which corruption is simply a bad deal for everyone. It is an irrational glitch in a system that must run with clockwork precision. This social contract relies on extremely high levels of trust. Roughly 80% of citizens trust the police, the judiciary, and one another, according to OECD data. Corruption is seen as a senseless breach of that pact, an act that betrays the collective trust on which the country's prosperity depends. But what happens when the state itself becomes unjust? This was the case in the childcare benefits scandal, where an overzealous tax authority financially destroyed 26,000 innocent families. It wasn't classic corruption, but a failure of the state. The response was decisive. In 2021, the entire government led by Mark Rutte resigned collectively, taking full political responsibility. This reveals the true Dutch DNA. They don't fight corruption only as a moral principle, but because they refuse to tolerate injustice and inefficiency. And when the system fails, even without bribes, they demand a full reset. Number 6. Sweden. Imagine being able to walk into a ministry and ask to read a politician's emails, and the law has allowed it since 1766. This is not a radical fantasy. It is the beating heart of the system in Sweden, the 8th least corrupt country in the world. Their most powerful weapon isn't an app, but a 250-year-old principle: total transparency. This principle of public access states that every government document is, by default, an open book. It turns every single citizen into a potential auditor, creating a formidable deterrent. This transparency is the foundation of a demanding social contract. Swedes pay some of the highest taxes on the planet and, in return, expect to see how every single krona is spent. Corruption isn't just a crime, it is a theft from the collective. And to even attempt to conceal it, you must challenge centuries of history. But what happens when the threat isn't a bribe, but colossal incompetence? In 2017, a government agency exposed the sensitive data of millions of citizens. There was no personal gain, only catastrophic negligence. The system's reaction was ruthless. The scandal triggered a crisis that forced 2 government ministers to resign. This reveals Sweden's true secret. Their integrity is measured not only in punishing dishonesty, but in holding power accountable for its most serious mistakes. Number 5. Switzerland. What if you could block any law by referendum? In Switzerland, the 5th least corrupt nation in the world, citizens do more than elect politicians. They constantly keep them in check. Their secret weapon is a powerful direct democracy that holds corruption at bay. Power is fragmented across thousands of municipalities and 26 cantons, making it almost impossible to corrupt the entire system. But the ultimate weapon is the popular referendum. Any law can be overturned by the people. This forces politicians into perpetual transparency because the populace is the final arbiter. The result is a social contract in which citizens feel like true owners of the state and see corruption as a personal attack on their sovereignty. Yet behind this fortress of integrity lurked a troubling shadow. Permissive laws governing corruption between private actors allowed FIFA, headquartered in Zurich, to grow into an empire of kickbacks. The scandal humiliated the nation and forced Parliament to finally criminalise sports-related corruption at the federal level. Even more controversial, the famed bank secrecy offered a refuge for dirty money for decades, staining Switzerland's iconic banks. Only international pressure convinced the country to dismantle that age-old system and replace it with tax transparency agreements. FIFAgate and the banking scandals reveal the Swiss paradox, an internally impeccable system that prospered by offering opacity to the outside world. The lesson Switzerland learned is clear. True integrity means not only keeping your own house clean, but refusing to be a safe harbour for other people's filth. Number 4. Norway, $290,000 per person. That is how much each Norwegian would receive if Norway, the 5th least corrupt nation in the world, were to liquidate its treasure. The largest sovereign wealth fund on the planet, a $1.6 trillion colossus. This mountain of wealth is their ultimate armour against corruption. While many oil-rich nations fall prey to the resource curse, Norway rewrote the rules with a brilliant system. Oil revenues never flow into the state budget. Instead, they go straight into the fund, which invests exclusively abroad. This prevents an excess of money from flooding the domestic economy, which would harm other industries, and it also stops politicians from funding clientelist projects. The government may spend only the annual return, preserving the capital for future generations. For Norwegians, this is not state money, but collective property. Every investment is traceable online. But that fortress has shown cracks abroad. Equinor, the state energy giant, was embroiled in serious corruption scandals to secure contracts in high-risk countries, including payments to consultants in Iran, an embarrassing paradox for a nation proud of its ethics. Yet their reaction reveals their true strength. Rather than cover things up, the system responded with federal investigations, crippling fines, and public outrage that shook corporate leadership. Norway's lesson is powerful. True integrity does not mean being immune to failure, but having the courage to pursue your shortcomings with the same tenacity you use to protect your treasures. Number 3. Luxembourg. How does a tiny nation become one of the richest financial centres on the planet? For decades, Luxembourg's secret, the reason it ranks as the 5th least corrupt country in the world, was exactly that: secrecy. But its recent history is one of transparency won the hard way. While domestic corruption is virtually non-existent in a system that generates immense wealth, the Grand Duchy's real battle has been over its international role. For years, its fiscal opacity was its greatest asset. Then came the LuxLeaks scandal in 2014, which revealed to the world how hundreds of multinationals, thanks to secret agreements with the state, were paying taxes close to zero. This was not a bribe paid to an official. It was a state-sponsored system of mass tax avoidance. Under immense global pressure, Luxembourg was forced to change course, adopting transparency laws and ending its legendary bank secrecy. Yet the transition is far from complete. The 2021 OpenLux investigation showed how easy it still was to hide the true owners of offshore companies, some of them linked to organised crime. Luxembourg's case teaches a crucial lesson. It shows that one thing is the corruption perceived by citizens in everyday life, and on that front, the country excels. Quite another are the systemic practices offered to external actors, far less visible to the population, and, perhaps for that reason, more tolerated. It is a nation continuously torn between its impeccable domestic image and the shadows of its global business. Number 2. Finland. What would happen if you lost your wallet in a capital city? In Helsinki, the odds of getting it back intact are the highest in the world. This simple fact reveals Finland's secret weapon, the country that ranks as the 2nd least corrupt nation on the planet. A social trust so deep it feels almost tangible. This trust is not an emotion, but an infrastructure built on pillars of granite. One of the freest presses in the world, acting as a relentless watchdog, an education system that teaches equality and responsibility, and a society with low economic inequality, where corruption finds little fertile ground in resentment. Finns placed blind trust in their institutions, with over 90% expressing confidence in the police. But what happens when that very institution spectacularly betrays that trust? It happened with Jari Aarnio, the head of Helsinki's anti-drug unit. For years, the man entrusted with fighting crime was, in fact, a criminal boss running a vast drug trafficking operation. The scandal shocked the nation, but the response confirmed its strength. The judiciary, through tenacious investigations, dismantled his network and sentenced him to 13 years in prison. Finland's lesson is powerful. Their strength does not lie in being immune to betrayal, but in believing so deeply in justice that they will pursue those who defile it, even if they wear the same uniform. Before we reveal number one, and uncover the patterns common to all these countries that teach us how to fight corruption, if you found this video informative, we kindly ask you to support our project with a like, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you don't miss our new videos. We also remind you of our new channel, America vs. Europe, where we rank all European countries, the United States and Canada, across different factors. And if you want to know which are the most corrupt European countries, write corruption in the comments. Number 1. Denmark, 200 billion euros. It is the colossal sum at the centre of one of the largest money laundering scandals in history. The shocking thing? It happened in Denmark, the nation perennially ranked number 1 in the world for integrity. This paradox reveals everything. Danish supremacy does not come from an absence of crime, but from a social ecosystem almost perfect for fighting it. It is a nation built on trust and on samfundssind, a deep civic-mindedness where acting for the common good is the norm. Trust in institutions is total, bureaucracy is transparent and digital, and a strong welfare system reduces the inequalities that elsewhere feed corruption. The system is designed to work so fairly that corruption looks like an irrational act. But then, how was the Danske Bank scandal possible? For years, its Estonian branch acted as a laundry for dirty Russian money, while executives in Copenhagen and the supervisors turned a blind eye. It showed that even the strongest system in the world is vulnerable when the lure of global profits becomes deafening. The Danish lesson is the most important of all. The response, albeit late, was powerful. The CEO resigned and the bank paid $2 billion in fines. Their secret is not perfection, but a system so healthy that it can recognize its own illness and administer the bitterest cure to itself rather than lose its soul. But now that we know the story of these 10 nations, we ask, is there a winning recipe to fight corruption? Looking at these countries, 4 fundamental lessons emerge. First, consequence is inevitable. The most powerful lesson is this: punishment is not just possible, it is certain. It does not matter who you are. If you are a banker who caused a financial crisis, you go to prison. If you are a minister involved in a scandal, you resign. If you are a corrupt police officer, you are prosecuted. When consequence becomes an automatic function of the system, impunity dies and corruption loses its oxygen. Second, power operates under constant light. Transparency is not an option, it is the default. Imagine a system where every public expense, every official's email, every state investment is an open book consultable by anyone at any time. This is not a dream, it is the standard in many of these countries. When every action leaves a visible trace, corruption becomes a risk simply too high to take. Third, citizens are the last line of defense. The fight against corruption is not delegated to an elite, it is distributed power. It is the right of a people to reject a law by referendum, as in Switzerland. It is the strength of a press so free it can investigate anyone without fear. It is the protection guaranteed to a single employee who, by blowing the whistle, can shake an entire industry. A healthy system arms its citizens and turns them into active guardians. Fourth, internal honesty demands external accountability. We discovered a crucial paradox. Several top-ranked nations have faced colossal scandals tied to global dirty money. This teaches us that integrity has 2 faces. One thing is being honest within your borders. Another, far harder, is refusing to be a safe harbour for other people's dishonesty. True excellence is reached when your ethics do not stop at the border. These nations are not perfect. They are proof that corruption is not eliminated, but fought. And it is fought by building an ecosystem of accountability, transparency, and shared power. An ecosystem that is all too often missing in the 10 most corrupt countries in Europe. If you want to know which they are, write corruption in the comments. And you, which of these pillars do you think is most crucial? And which one is most lacking in your country? Let us know in the comments. If this topic interested you, we recommend watching this video, in which we go beyond corruption to reveal the 10 most dangerous and notorious neighbourhoods and ghettos in Europe. That's all for this video. See you next time.